Hey folks, and welcome back. I'm very excited to present to you today one of my absolute favorite topics, emotional intelligence. I'm absolutely fascinated by the connection of mind and body. In fact, we hear that phrase all the time. What I'd like to do in this video is explain to you how emotions, and specifically emotional intelligence, is that connection of mind and body. Stay tuned. To start off on the right foot, it's important to define our terms. One of the basic requirements of having emotional intelligence is to be able to effectively name your emotions. So, when you hear things like good, okay, all right, fine, good, bad, you are not hearing emotions. What you're hearing is judgment. So, I want to teach you 5 words. Mad, sad, glad or happy, disgusted, and fearful. 5 words. 5 basic emotions determine what it is that we feel. Now that might sound surprising at first because there are way more than 5 words to describe emotion. What's happening is that with these 5 emotions, we have offshoots that can be called secondary emotions. They are often called social emotions, but they all spawn from one of those 5 basic emotions. Now it's important to know these words because, as we'll discuss later, knowing these words help you determine what to do with them, meaning how to manage them appropriately. So what exactly is an emotion? The Latin definition of emotion means to move. And that's exactly what an emotion is. It's movement. The way I like to talk about it is that it's an expression of our belief. If belief is that static thing, that concept in our mind, the emotion is the energetic echo that spawns from it. It's important to recognize this because throughout this video, what I'll keep doing is bridging that gap between what's happening mentally and what's happening bodily. So at its basic component, emotion is one of those 5 words plus movement. What I encourage you to do is just pause a moment, pause the video or wait until after, and really introspect on and feel how you move when you're feeling one of those basic emotions. This culminates into a working definition of emotional intelligence, which is learning from our emotions in order to understand ourselves and others better. When we understand ourselves first, we create connection, and then when we can understand others, we create more connection. It is that is the spiritual aspect of emotional intelligence. I think a big barrier of entry to this whole spirituality thing is the statement that we create our own reality. I think the problem with this language is it goes a little bit too far. I don't really know whether or not I chose to be a white male that grew up in Texas. It didn't seem like I did. Whether I did or not is irrelevant, because we can't really determine right this moment whether or not we created our own reality. What I want to talk about is the fact that we create our own experience. Now, that's a very different thing. By experience, I mean the totality of our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors in the present moment. Now, in the present moment is a very spiritual term, but really what it comes down to is recognizing that when we are not in the present moment, we are most likely creating suffering. So, beliefs and thoughts and feelings and emotions, how are they connected? To get started, what I would like you to do is I want you to imagine someone that you love. What did you feel? Perhaps you felt happiness or love or excitement. Notice, though, that you felt something. What you did was you generated a belief, which is nothing other than a value judgment about the world. And from that value judgment, you created an emotion. Now what I'd like you to do is imagine the last major mistake that you made. What did you feel? Anger? Disappointment? Anxiety? Depending on how you judge that past mistake will determine what you feel. Notice this is a very, very basic activity that I do all the time to help people understand that what it is that we think, specifically believe, will determine what it is we feel. Water bottle. Did you feel anything? Probably not. You have no personal relationship with this water bottle. So when someone says water bottle, what they're doing is they're using a mental representation, a thought, to describe something. That's vastly different than this. Best water bottle ever, man! I actually really like this water bottle, and my clients that watch this will remember this activity. There is neutrality in our thoughts up until the moment we place a value judgment, which is nothing other than, and think gladiator here, thumbs up or thumbs down. I thumbs up this water bottle. I like it. I have an emotion that I call happiness. So now I want to describe to you the biggest barrier of entry to a place of authentic, genuine joy and peace. And it's the belief that emotions come from the outside. I cannot tell you, I have no idea actually, how many times I've heard someone say in a professional setting or a personal setting, they made me feel angry or she made me feel sad. And just think about how many times you make that statement. And when you make that statement, you make it true for you. And when you make that thing true for you, you become a victim. What you've done is you've made yourself powerless to the emotions that you yourself created from your value judgments. Until you recognize that you are in fact creating your own experience, you will stay stuck and you will suffer. When we start getting good at learning to connect what it is that we believe with what it is that we feel, we're on the road to understanding empathy. Now, empathy and sympathy are oftentimes used as synonyms, but I like to differentiate them now. Empathy is an intellectual understanding as to why someone is feeling something. So when you start learning what it is that causes you to feel stuff, let's say you're in traffic and someone cuts you off and you instantly feel anger. It doesn't seem like you have a thought there. But in some other time when you're not in traffic, sit and contemplate what it is that caused you to feel anger. You had some belief about the situation. They weren't being fair, they were being rude, whatever it happens to be. Now you understand that a certain attitude, a certain belief caused you to feel anger. Now, when you do that, you start creating an understanding of what values you have in this world. You want people to be fair and not rude. Likewise, you can actually extend this empathy towards others. And this is the basic beginning steps of connection. When you're able to understand why someone is feeling something, you are less inclined to push them away, to resist them, and to judge them. Now, in empathy, there is acknowledgement and understanding. There is not necessarily agreement. Agreement creates collusion between people, which might be great if you're deciding on what to eat for dinner. But when you're having an argument, agreement may not work. In fact, agreement may not even be able to exist for you. But empathy can always be there, provided you're allowing yourself to intellectually understand why someone might be feeling what they're feeling. The other huge component of emotional intelligence is being able to feel our emotions. One point I'd like to make here is to differentiate the difference between pain and suffering. A lot of people believe that suffering is inevitable. It's just not true. Now, this is based on the terms that I use. When I use the word pain, what I mean to suggest and talk about is discomfort. If you stub your toe or bang your head on something, it causes pain. When you feel something that we'd call anxiety or sadness, that also feels painful. It's not pleasant. Suffering, on the other hand, is what we do in our relationship to emotion. When we have an emotion that we in fact don't tolerate, I'll get to that in a moment, what we do is we resist that energy and thus create more unpleasant energy. So a basic point of emotional intelligence is to no longer judge our emotions as good or bad. There's no such thing as a good or bad emotion. There are pleasant and unpleasant emotions. Big difference. You've taken the value judgment out of it, and you're allowing yourself now to actually be curious, bodily, with what's going on. So, I had mentioned that one of the biggest barriers to growth and development and happiness and all that fun stuff is believing that we create, or that other people create our emotions. This other barrier is having no tolerance for the physical sensations of our emotions. So, activity time. What I want you to do is think of the last time you felt a very strong emotion. It could be anything, anxiety or anger or whatever. What I want you to do is pay attention in your body where you feel it. Now, if you struggle with this, really give a very detailed memory of that last time you felt whatever it is you felt. Now, generally speaking, what you can start paying attention to is your stomach area, where very oftentimes anxiety lives. It can also live here. Sadness very oftentimes is felt right here. Anger very oftentimes is felt in the neck and the shoulders. Now, these are generalities, but the point is you can learn to develop a sensitivity to where in your body you feel what it is you're feeling. What's important here, and what actually is crucial here, is to learn to train yourself to feel the sensation without comment. And when I say comment, I mean without judgment. As we've already discussed, when you judge, you create an emotion. If you're in the process then of learning to feel your emotion and you're judging it as good or bad or wrong or horrible or awful or whatever, you're creating more emotion. That's why emotion can feel so troubling, is because you're layering yourself. Rather than getting to and staying with that pure original sensation of sadness, anxiety, whatever, you're creating more and more. That sense of burden and overwhelm happens. It happens because you're judging. One basic aspect of mindfulness and basic meditation techniques, done later in a different video, is to get to a place where you just feel. Learning to tolerate this unpleasantness will lead you to a place where you can learn to jettison that energy. Remember, the emotion needs to move. If you're judging it, you're stamping it down, you're not allowing it to move, and you're literally clogging your body up. And I mean that literally. This is not metaphor here. So what's important is to just go slow. Be gentle. Take your time. Feel what it is you're feeling. So if you recall, I defined empathy as the intellectual understanding of someone else's emotion. I didn't discuss sympathy, and I'd like to do that now. Like I said, very often these two words are used as synonyms, and they're actually quite different. Empathy is that intellectual capacity. Sympathy is when you feel alongside or with someone else. Notice this is a very different idea than the way people oftentimes use sympathy. Oftentimes it's used to mean feeling at someone or towards someone a certain thing. It actually hides within it judgment and condescension. It's sometimes very hard to find. What I'm talking about here is an energetic resonance with someone else. Now, for you science folks, this is the mirror neurons that science has been talking about. So there's the neuroscientific aspect of it, and then there's the experiential aspect of it. So tying empathy and sympathy and finally compassion all together, imagine a triangle. At the very top is empathy. It requires the least amount of effort. You don't even have to be around someone to understand why someone is feeling what it is they're feeling. Sympathy brings us even closer to the person when we feel alongside with them. And quickly, that does not necessarily mean we always are feeling sadness. If you go with your best friend to help them buy a new car and they're happy and excited and you're happy and excited, you are sympathetic. Sympathy is simply feeling with. And finally, at the base of that triangle is compassion. Compassion, fully informed by empathy and sympathy, allows us to help people through their fun or troubling situations. And notice I said fun. It can be very stressful to buy a new car, a new house, or get married, or whatever. When we are fully compassionate, we understand why someone is feeling something. We may or may not be feeling what they are feeling, and then we are best informed as to what we can do to be helpful. So there's your basic spiritual component. There's nothing fruity, there's nothing esoteric, there's nothing ooh la la about any of this. It's quite simple. When you understand what it is what you feel, when you learn to tolerate it and express that in a positive manner, you're then more capable of engaging with someone else's emotionality without creating more of your own. It's in this place that we are actually one person.